1979. If you remember, start Christmas 1978 and following by the whole year 1979, war between China and Vietnam. That resulted in the breakdown of all logistical support to the Communist Party of Thailand. It affected the communist struggles in Thailand. So this is, apart from these two important factors, but above all, the collapse of the communist movement in Thailand was primarily due to the conflicts between the young radicals who went into the jungles after the massacre and the old guards, the old cadres in the CPT. The young radicals soon found that the Communist Party was both dogmatic and totalitarian. The conflict between the younger and newcomer and the old guard soon almost led to mutinies at many camps in the jungles. Disillusioned with the Communist Party and its ideology, most students left the jungle camps individually and en bloc. Some brought with them hundreds of defected guerrilla fighters and people who lost hope for revolution. By 1982, only a few years, only 6 years after they went in, it was reported that there were no more than a few dozen students left in the jungle. All returned. Had the Communist Party won the Revolutionary War, those who died in the massacre would definitely have been glorified as the martyrs of 1976. Had the red flag been planted at Thammasat University, as the revolutionary song suggests, the debt of gratitude to those who had sacrificed their life in the massacre would have been paid. But in reality, the CPT and the entire radical movement collapsed in the 1980s. Radical students returned home. But it was a homecoming in total defeat, totally humiliated. Many felt that they had dedicated years of their life to the eventual hopelessness. Their life became a void. They brought home only stigma and malaria. They were in the middle of 20s, but they already lost 2 wars. One in the city that ending with the slaughter of their friends. The other in the jungle that ending with disillusionment. The sentiment is reflected in this famous song. You know it from Les Miserables. The duty of the survivors is represented nicely in this song, even though it's nothing about Thailand at all. Oh, my friends, forgive me that I live and you are gone. There's a grief that can't be spoken. There's pain goes on and on. My friends, don't ask me what your sacrifice was for. The sentiment not merely put out, stop the vengeance, no more revenge, die, revenge gone. But it also took away their dignity, their pride, and their confidence in the justification for their past activism. Without such a pride, suffering and grief due to the loss of friends in the massacre and in jungles became a specter of moral ambivalence, which was hard to overcome. The losses in the massacre seemed empty of all meanings, becoming personal trauma that were hard to overcome to terms with. I know many who never did. The massacre, still vivid in their memories, was not a subject they would talk about, no. Even me, if nobody asks me first, I don't talk. The massacre, still vivid in the memories they don't want to talk about. They were not sure if people would understand, let alone sympathize with them, because they themselves did not understand. The commemoration in 1996, 20 years after that, was a breakthrough among these former radicals. By that time, political conditions had changed. Democratization in Thailand was gradually in place. Political atmosphere became more open and more liberal. And that, 1996, the Cold War was over. The anti-communist hysteria looked, in retrospect from that time, anti-communist is unreasonable, perhaps foolish. Anti-communist to the point that killing the communists looks foolish. Marxism, Maoism, socialism, communism looks absurd and pitiful, not scary to the public anymore. So the massacre was seen by the public and by younger generation in the light of 1990s as a kind of weird. Why it happened? Why such a brutality is needed? It was a tragedy that shouldn't have happened. The public recognized the tragedy and loss of those former radicals has gone through. The commemoration brought former radicals to revisit the painful past. Together, they come out of the closet, so to speak, as if to make public statement about their pains. They were proud of who they were in the 1970s. Since then, yes, they can talk about the massacre in public. Yet, the commemorative movement in 1990s may have changed the discourse of the massacre to some extent, but did not eradicate silence completely. The limit of speakability remains. The line of what can and what cannot be spoken out was evident. In one incident, small incident, involving not many people. At the beginning, on the first day of the commemoration, the activists, by then 20 years after the massacre, put up exhibit showing what happened. One exhibit, one picture. It was, by the way, the whole thing is a powerful exhibit. We surrounded in front of one picture and heated debate took place. It's a picture of hanging that was alleged hanging of the crown prince in effigy. Should we leave the picture there or not? Because it means that we implicate the monarchy. So why the commemoration allow us to speak out? The line has been drawn. We take that picture down. Even in the moment of breakthrough of silence, we take that picture down. The line has been drawn since then up to now. We can talk about violence, brutality, death, violence, brutality, death, but we're not supposed to talk about the who or the why. Now, for the perpetrator, the massacre should have been a historic accomplishment, a proud victory over communism, as they enjoyed during the immediate few months after the massacre. It was not. The more liberal atmosphere in the late 90s through the 1990s and the first half of the 2000s. The killing of leftist students for those, which seems to people, seems nonsensical. The brutality was beyond reason, let alone jubilation. In one case in 1988, for example, a retired Army general ran for election. Retired Army general ran for election on the platform that he and his party was pious, uncorrupt, and more moral than typical politicians. But the public soon learned that this retired general, among his accomplishments, including being an organizer of right-wing thugs that involved in the massacre. The general spent the rest of the campaign to control damage and his reputation. Apparently, by that time, 1988, the involvement with the massacre became a liability already. With the impact of the commemoration in 1996, the perpetrators' memory was even more marginalized. They were subdued. They were silenced. It is virtually suppressed by the pressure from public memory. I began to interview about 2 dozen of them from 2000 to 2006. Yes, I went to talk to my former enemies and found that most of them by then, in the first half of 2000, were on defensive. Many of them argued that they were pawns who followed orders. Many excused themselves from responsibility by their youth, by their immaturity. Ironically, some justified their action by historical circumstance. I'm supposed to understand historical circumstance. One of them tried to explain to me how to think like a historian. Most believed that they had saved the country from communism, but now they felt betrayed by the society. They felt that the society forgot their contributions and turned against them. Their bitterness and ambivalence was obvious and strong. Most were not proud of what they did anymore. Yet, there were some still proud of what they did. Among the most active group that morning was the paramilitary thugs funded by the military security agencies. Insist that their actions were justified. This guy, I'm not going to go details. He's military general who organized the thugs. They have saved the country from communism. Despite that, they cannot brag about their pride anymore, let alone jubilation. A few totally changed. A few perpetrators totally changed. Their memories also changed. I met a few who completely forgot their past action, simply denying what they did. Perhaps the memory of the roles of the incident, memory of their role in the incident has been gradually modified in response to the changing political climates and norms in order to accommodate their current life without guilt. Perhaps they had told themselves so many times in many different ways during the past 40 years until they themselves believe in their new memories in order to live on a normal life in a different political climate. History also contributes to the killing and silencing the past. I'm going to go briefly because there's not much time. The point is that since the beginning of modern historical narrative in Siam, in the early 20th century, the dominant discourse of Thai history has been the royal nationalist one. The royal nationalist history of Thailand is a saga of unity of Thai people under benevolent monarch, especially the current dynasty. In this narrative, the kingdom faced danger from time to time. Every time, the heroic and benevolent royal warriors always emerged to protect the country. Under leadership and righteousness, the country rises and lives in peace and prosperity. All Thais must be grateful to the monarchy. Some highly royalist Thai today say that they're grateful that the royals allow them to live in the country. That's the way they talk about it. All Thai must be grateful to the monarch. Given such historical ideology, the domestic radicals were regarded as dangerous enemy or the evil of Thais. All the Thais were not normal. Those who were not royalists were not normal. They're insane or must have some conspiracy behind them. The same historical ideology that has been important factor for the killing, that ideology that contribute to the killing. The same ideology make the memories of the victims, the memory of brutality, hard to understand. Because the public and younger generation try to understand, is the monarchy, is that bad? Even criminal. It's hard for them to understand. They don't have to believe our story, but it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe the monarch has been anything but highly virtuous. It's hard for them. In Thai historical ideology, moreover, there was no state crime. There's no concept of the state committing crime against its own people. The monarchy and the state were benevolent, ruled by virtue. What has been said, power corrupt, absolute power corrupt, absolutely, that's so Western, that Lord Acton. In Buddhist political philosophy, power was a reflection of virtue. Absolutely reflect absolute virtue. I'm not kidding, but I have no time to explain. This political philosophy of the Buddhist, the Hindu Buddhist tradition, is that way. It's opposite for Lord Acton's. I'm away from the script, sorry. So, mass destruction, yes, there were mass destruction story in history, but it was justified battle against the enemy or the suppression of malicious rebels. So it was not a crime by the state. If the ruler turned into a despot, a righteous contender would soon challenge and depose him. A massacre with extreme brutality does not fit the narrative of the benevolent state and monarchy, especially in the reign of King Bhumibol, the most virtuous king of all time. This memory was odd, perhaps unthinkable. I have another section on forgiving silence. I try to explain about some victims, not about right-wing Buddhists anymore, no. I'm explaining why some victims found Buddhism and forgiveness in Buddhist sense as a way to come to terms with the tragedy, but byproduct of that idea, Buddhist idea of forgiveness. Silence, they got into silence